A prison guard heard screaming from an empty cell. What he found is still unexplained, the empty cell that wasn't silent. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button if you're brave enough to step into the darkest wing of an American prison. What you're about to hear still keeps veteran officers awake at night. The noise came at 2:14 a.m., sharp, sudden, and unmistakable. Officer Daniel Reed, a 10-year correctional veteran at the Ohio State Reformatory, froze with his flashlight halfway raised. A scream cut through the silence of cell block C. Not a shout. Not a call for help. A scream. High, strained, and echoing off the steel and concrete like someone was trapped. But cell 39, the source of the noise, had been empty for years. The hallway looked exactly as it always did at night, long, dim, washed in cold blue light, with paint peeling off old, sweating pipes. Reed walked slowly, boots echoing on the floor as he approached the cell. He checked the roster again. No inmates were assigned here. No officers were near. Reinforced door locked. Electrical maintenance completed 2 days earlier. Everything should have been normal. But the scream hadn't been normal. Reed radioed control. Dispatch, confirms cell block C status. I'm hearing noise from an unoccupied unit. A pause. Cell block C is clear. No movement scheduled. No inmates placed there. Then something is in cell 39. The line went quiet. Reed steadied his breathing. He didn't believe in the supernatural. He had worked enough long, grueling shifts to know that old prisons made sounds most modern buildings never would. Pipes expanded. Wind crawled through cracks. Steel frames shifted. But this had been a human scream. He reached the door and lifted his flashlight. The beam cut through the barred window in the steel door. Inside, dust floated in the beam like tiny drifting snow. The bunk was stripped bare. The vent cover hung loose. Nothing moved. Then he heard it again, not a scream this time, but a whisper. A single word, impossible to make out, muffled like someone speaking through fabric. Reed felt chills crawl up the back of his neck. Control, do we have audio issues in C-Wing? No issues reported. Reed leaned closer to the small reinforced glass panel, but the whisper faded. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. Something wasn't right. He needed backup. Before he could call again, a voice behind him spoke quietly. You heard it too. He turned sharply. Officer Linda Carver, a night shift partner and one of the few who took the strange building noises seriously, stood a few feet away. You were on the South Walk, Reed said. How did you get here so fast? I heard it from down the hall, she replied. It wasn't just loud. It sounded like it came from inside the walls. Reed frowned. The prison was old, almost a century. Behind some cells were maintenance shafts and ventilation tunnels, long since closed but never fully mapped in modern logs. If someone was inside them, it wouldn't be the first time a prison hid secrets. Carver stepped closer to the door. What did you hear? A scream, Reed said. Human. No question. Carver's face tightened. Then we need to open it. Reed hesitated. This was an empty cell, no reason to unlock it at 2 in the morning. But protocol required investigation when an officer reported human distress. He slid the key into the lock. The metal groaned as he turned it. He pushed the door open. The room smelled of dust and cold air. He swept his flashlight across the walls. That's when he saw it. Not a person. Not an animal. But a handprint. A single, fresh handprint smeared across the inside of the door. The dust disturbed. The shape outlined clearly. Carver's breath caught in her throat. Daniel, that wasn't there yesterday. Reed stepped closer. The print was too crisp, too deliberate, like someone had pressed their palm firmly against the steel from the inside. But this cell is sealed, he whispered. No one has been in here. Behind them, the sound came again. Low. Breathing. Slow and uneven. From inside the vent. Reed's flashlight snapped toward the grate. Something moved behind it. Something waiting. Something that should not have been there. And when the officers removed the vent cover, what they found inside would change everything: the vent, the ledger, and the lie. The vent cover came off with a hard metallic snap. Reed held his flashlight steady, bracing himself for a rat, a broken pipe, anything ordinary. Anything he could explain in a report. But what the beam revealed wasn't an animal, it was an object. A small fabric bundle wedged deep in the shaft, wrapped in what looked like an old piece of inmate clothing. Carver reached in with a gloved hand and slowly pulled it free. Dust drifted down in a soft cloud. The bundle was tied loosely with a string. Reed untied it, and the flashlight hit something he didn't expect: a notebook. Thin, weathered, its edges frayed and yellow. The kind of ledger inmates made when official paperwork was denied to them. Carver whispered, "This wasn't logged. There's no record of anything stored in C-Wing's vents." Reed flipped through the first few pages. Dates. Times. Notes. Written in shaky handwriting. "I hear them at night. Cell 39 isn't empty. Something moves in the old shaft." The final entry chilled him. "If anyone finds this, check the basement access. The lock isn't broken, it was changed." Reed's pulse spiked. The basement access hadn't been opened in years, at least according to the official logs. Carver frowned. Who wrote this? There was no name. No inmate number. Only initials, DK. Reed's mind raced. DK wasn't familiar, but the prison had housed thousands over decades. Some records were digital. Some were destroyed when the facility changed administration. Some were never entered properly at all. Before they could analyze further, the radio crackled sharply. "Reed, Carver, report to control. Now." Carver mouthed, "They know." Reed tucked the notebook inside his vest and followed her quietly. The walk to control felt longer than usual. Every echo in the hallway made him wonder if the scream had been a warning, or a distraction. When they entered the control room, Warden Harlan Briggs was waiting. Older, stern, and known for caring more about reports than people, he stared at them with cold interest. "Why are you investigating Cell Block C?" he asked. Reed kept his tone calm. "Unusual noise complaint, sir." "Noise doesn't require opening sealed cells," Briggs replied. "Unless you're accusing this facility of a breach." Carver answered carefully. "We followed procedure. We heard a scream." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "From an empty cell." Reed held his ground. "Sir, with respect, the building is almost a century old. We need to confirm it wasn't structural." Briggs stepped forward. "Good. Then consider it confirmed. No further action needed. Leave the rest to maintenance." Reed felt the warning beneath the words. "Stop asking questions." But he didn't move. "Warden, the vent had a..." "Officer Reed." Briggs's voice dropped sharply. "This conversation is over." Carver glanced sideways at Reed. Her eyes said one thing clearly: don't push. Not yet. They left control without another word. The moment they stepped back into the hallway, Carver grabbed Reed's arm. "He knows something. And he doesn't want us near Cell Block C again." Reed nodded. "We need to find out who DK was." They headed to the archive room, a cramped space filled with old ledgers, inmate cards, and crumbling boxes of records. The clerk, an older man named Felix, looked startled when they arrived. "Working late?" he asked nervously. "We need inmate files," Reed said. "Initials DK, probably pre-digital." Felix hesitated. "That's a lot of boxes." "Then start with inmates assigned to Cell Block C," Carver suggested. Felix sighed and disappeared behind the shelves. After several minutes he returned with an old paper file. "This is the only one matching those initials." Reed opened it. "Darren Kincaid." Transferred from West Wing in 1984. Assigned to Cell Block C in 1986. Final line. Status, removed from roster, basement transfer. Carver whispered, basement. The same place from the notebook. Reed felt a chill crawl down his spine. There is no basement roster. It hasn't existed since before we were born. Felix lowered his voice. Not officially. But older officers used to mention something, a maintenance extension under C Wing. Closed off decades ago. Reed stared at the file. Something had happened down there. Something removed from records. Something the warden didn't want unearthed. As he closed the folder, a sudden sound echoed through the corridor. A scream. The same scream. This time, louder. And coming from the stairwell that led straight down to the basement. Reed and Carver locked eyes. Whatever they heard earlier wasn't an echo. Something, or someone, was below the prison. And the only way to uncover the truth was to follow it. The basement no one was supposed to enter. The scream died into silence just as Reed and Carver reached the top of the basement stairwell. The air rushing up the steps felt colder than the rest of the prison, carrying a faint, metallic smell that made Reed's instincts flare. This wasn't a place officers used. Most didn't even know it still existed. But the ledger, the initials, the handprint, everything pointed here. Carver clicked on her flashlight. If this goes south, you take the blame. You're the one dragging me into retired tunnels at 3 in the morning. Reed managed a thin smile. You followed me. Not because I wanted to, she muttered. Because something is wrong. They descended slowly. Each step creaked beneath their weight. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until the sounds of the main prison faded completely. At the bottom was a rusted steel door with a faded sign that read authorized maintenance only, but the lock was newer than everything around it. Reed tried the handle. It opened. Inside was a narrow hallway lined with exposed pipes dripping condensation. The floor was uneven, littered with old tools, broken crates, and decades of dust, except for one thing. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading deeper into the dark. Carver whispered, someone's been down here recently. They followed the trail until it ended at a smaller door marked C-Wing Access Auxiliary. Reed pushed it open slowly. His flashlight cut into a wide service chamber containing old storage shelves and outdated ventilation controls. The room was quiet, too quiet. Then Reed noticed something on the floor. A piece of torn fabric, the same type used as inmate clothing in the 1980s. Carver picked it up. This can't still be here. Reed shook his head. It wasn't. Someone put it here recently. They scanned the room again. And that's when Reed saw it, a maintenance hatch in the far corner, partially open. The same kind of hatch that connected to the vents above cell 39. The scream hadn't come from the cell. It had come from below it. Reed crouched and lifted the hatch the rest of the way. A cool draft hit his face. Beneath was a cramped crawlspace leading to the vent system. Metal ducts branched like veins in every direction. Carver knelt beside him. You think someone's hiding in there? Reed shined his flashlight deeper. In the dust, he saw something small. He reached in and pulled it out. A plastic identification badge. Cracked. Faded. The name barely readable. Darren Kincaid. Carver's eyes widened. He vanished in 1986. Reed stared at the badge. He didn't vanish. He was moved down here. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from the vent behind them, like something scraping against metal. Carver shot to her feet. Reed turned toward the sound, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. Who's there? Reed called out. Silence. He stepped closer to the vent opening. A faint breath escaped from somewhere deep inside. Not a scream. Not a cry. Just breathing. Slow. Uneven. Human. Carver whispered, "Someone's alive in there." Reed felt the weight of that realization crash over him. If someone had been trapped, forgotten, left in some hidden extension of the prison system, it would explain everything. The ledger. The handprint. The scream. The warden's tension. The rushed attempts to stop the investigation. Reed reached toward the vent. "We're going to get you out. Just stay." Before he could finish, heavy footsteps thundered down the stairwell behind them. Reed and Carver spun around. Warden Briggs stood at the base of the stairs with 2 officers behind him. His voice was cold, sharp. "Step away from that hatch." Reed held up the badge. "We found evidence of a missing inmate." Briggs didn't blink. "There is no missing inmate. And you two were never here." Carver stepped forward. "Sir, someone is alive in that vent." Briggs raised a hand. "You heard old metal shift. That's all." Reed clenched his jaw. "Then why is his badge here?" Briggs exhaled slowly. Not angry, tired. Like a man carrying a secret for too long. "This wing was shut down for a reason," he said. "If you open what's buried down here, you'll destroy more than just this prison." Reed stared at him. "What happened to Darren Kincaid?" Briggs looked away. "He was transferred. End of record." "A lie." Before Briggs could move again, a sound crawled through the ducts. Not a scream, a voice. Weak. Cracked. "Help." Briggs froze. The 2 officers shifted uneasily. Carver took a step toward the hatch. Reed grabbed it with both hands. "We're opening it," he said. Briggs whispered, "Don't." But Reed pulled anyway. The hatch opened with a violent metallic groan. Cold air rushed out. Carver pointed her flashlight inside. The space was empty. No person. No body. Nothing but an old mattress frame, and a wall covered in handwritten messages, carved deep into the concrete. The last one read, "I'm still here." Reed stepped back, breath shaking. Carver whispered, "Where is he?" Briggs closed his eyes. "He's wherever the prison wants him to be."